The sky above Earth changed on a Tuesday morning. Without warning, 7 large ships appeared in orbit. They were smooth and dark, like polished stones. Radio signals across the world went silent for 3 minutes. When they returned, a new voice spoke on all channels. People of Earth, we are the Valdurian Empire. Your planet is now under our control. Resistance will bring destruction. At Lunar Base Alpha, Commander Lisa Mitchell stared at her screen. Her coffee cup slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. No one moved to clean it up. All eyes were fixed on the massive ships now visible through the base's observation windows. Are we receiving any other communications? Lisa asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. No, Commander, said Officer Kyle Benson. Just that same message repeating on all frequencies. Lisa pressed the emergency button that connected directly to Earth's defense headquarters. Within minutes, she was looking at the tired face of General Frank Howard. We see them too, Mitchell, he said. They appeared out of nowhere. Our satellites gave no warning. What are your orders, sir? Stand by. The President is calling an emergency meeting. Do not engage unless they fire first. The alien ships remained in position for 6 hours. Then a smaller craft detached from the largest vessel and descended toward Earth. It landed on the grounds of the United Nations building in New York. President Alan Carter arrived with a small security team and a group of scientists and language experts. The aliens that emerged from the craft stood nearly 7 feet tall. They had pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. Their eyes were large and completely black. 3 of them approached the human delegation. We speak your languages. The lead alien said, We have studied your broadcasts for many years. I am President Alan Carter, the President said. I represent Earth's United Nations. Why have you come here? The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. I am Commander Zex Troll of the Valdurian Empire. We have conquered 17 solar systems. Yours will be the 18th. Dr. Susan Walsh, head of Stenobiology, stepped forward. We wish to establish peaceful relations. We can share knowledge, resources. Silence, Zex Troll said. Your species is physically weak. Your technology is primitive. You have no unified military. You are divided by nations, religions, and ideologies. You will surrender or be destroyed. President Carter kept his face calm, though his hands trembled slightly. Perhaps we can find a compromise, Fat. There is no compromise, the alien interrupted. You have 30 of your Earth days to submit to our rule. After that, we will begin planetary bombardment, starting with your largest cities. And if we surrender? Carter asked. Your people will serve the Empire, some as workers, some as subjects for scientific study. Your planet's resources will be harvested for our use. The meeting lasted only 15 minutes. When the aliens returned to their ship, President Carter called an emergency session of all world leaders. From her position on the moon, Lisa Mitchell watched the smaller craft return to the main fleet. She received new orders almost immediately. Commander, General Howard's voice came through. We're activating Defense Protocol Omega. Begin preparations immediately. And Lisa, this stays completely off all standard channels. Understood, sir, she replied. As the Valdurian ships maintained their position above Earth, activity on the planet's surface appeared chaotic. News of the alien ultimatum spread rapidly. Some people panicked. Others prayed. Many fled the cities. But beneath the surface chaos, something else was happening. In military bases, factories, laboratories, and homes across the world, humans began to prepare. They shared information, repurposed technologies, and formed new alliances. Former enemies put aside their differences. Scientists worked around the clock. From space, it looked like disorder and fear. The Valdurians watched and were satisfied. They had seen this reaction before on other worlds. They expected surrender within 20 days. They did not understand what they were seeing. They thought the scattered, emotional response of humans showed weakness. They were wrong. The 30-day countdown had begun. And so had humanity's silent preparation for a fight that would shock the galaxy. Navy Captain John Everett stood in the underground bunker, 20 floors beneath what used to be a shopping mall in Colorado. Maps and screens covered the walls. Men and women worked at computers, their faces lit by blue light. No one had slept much in days. "Show me what we know about their ships," John said. Dr. Susan Walsh nodded and pulled up images on the main screen. She pointed to different parts of the alien vessels. "We've been studying their energy readings. They use some kind of plasma-based weapon system here and here. Their hulls are made of a metal we've never seen before, but there's something interesting about their communications." She zoomed in on one section of the largest ship. "They use a frequency that interferes with their own sensor systems. It's like they never expected anyone to use their own technology against them." John rubbed his tired eyes. "Can we use that?" "Maybe. We're working on it." In another part of the bunker, retired Marine Eric Daniels taught a group of civilians how to move quietly and work as a team. The group included teachers, farmers, office workers, and even a famous actor. None of them had held weapons before last week. "Move low and slow," Eric said. "If these aliens can see in the dark, we need to be invisible in other ways. Feel the ground with your feet before you put your weight down." His students practiced moving across the room without making noise. They were learning fast. Across the world, similar training happened in basements, forests, and abandoned buildings. Humanity prepared in silence. Air Force Colonel Samantha Wells coordinated from a mobile command center. Her team had converted ordinary trucks to carry communications equipment. They moved locations every 6 hours to avoid detection. "The satellite data shows their patrol patterns," she told her officers. "They're predictable. Every ship follows the same route at the same time. They never change." "That's good for us," her second-in-command said. "Very good," Samantha agreed. "They think in straight lines. We don't." In factories around the world, regular production lines switched to making new items. Car manufacturers built specialized parts for weapons. Toy makers produced small devices that could interfere with alien signals. Chemical plants made explosives and medicines. President Carter met with John and Susan in a secure room deep under the White House. "Tell me we have a chance," the president said. John placed a small device on the table. "We've learned more in 20 days than we sometimes learn in years. The Valdurians have advanced technology, but they don't innovate well. They've never needed to." Susan picked up the device. "This can jam their communications. We've made 10,000 already." "And weapons?" Carter asked. "We're adapting what we have," John said. "But our real advantage isn't technology. It's people," Susan finished. "The Valdurians have a rigid command structure. Orders only flow one way, down. When we captured their messages, we found something interesting. Their soldiers don't make decisions in the field. They wait for orders." The president leaned back in his chair. "And humans don't wait." "Exactly," John said. "We adapt. We improvise. Every human can be a leader when needed." From space, the Valdurians watched Earth's activities with growing confusion. Their sensors showed movement patterns they couldn't understand. Humans seemed to be running in all directions. Some fled cities. Others gathered in strange places. Their behavior followed no logical pattern. Commander Zextrol reported to the High Command via secure channel. "The humans appear disorganized and frightened," he said. "Some of their leaders have gone into hiding. Their military forces are scattered. We expect their surrender within 10 days. "Good," the High Commander replied. "Prepare landing parties for the main population centers. Once we control those, the rest will fall quickly." "It will be easy," Sextrol agreed. "Like all the others." As the aliens made their plans, humans continued their silent preparation. In homes and schools and factories, they shared information and ideas. They built networks that the Valdurians couldn't see or understand. The countdown showed 10 days remaining. The Valdurians were confident. They had conquered 17 worlds before. This one would be no different. They were wrong again. The 30 days passed. At dawn on the final day, the Vuldurian ships moved into attack position. Small craft poured from the larger vessels, heading toward major cities across Earth. Commander Zextrol led the first wave toward New York. "Begin the assault," he ordered. "Take control of their government centers first." 500 Vuldurian soldiers landed in Central Park. They formed perfect lines and marched toward the city center. Their weapons were ready. Their armor gleamed in the morning light. They expected scared humans to run at the sight of them. The streets were empty. "Where are they hiding?" a Vuldurian officer asked. Suddenly, music began playing from every speaker in the area. Loud rock music filled the air. The Vuldurians looked around in confusion. Their sensitive hearing made the sound painful. Then things began to happen very quickly. Windows opened in buildings all around them. Ordinary objects rained down. Water balloons filled with paint that blocked the aliens' vision systems. Mirrors that reflected sunlight into their sensitive eyes. Small drones that buzzed around their heads. None of these things were deadly weapons. They didn't need to be. They only needed to create confusion. In Nebraska, factory worker Paul Rodriguez waited with 20 neighbors in a cornfield. They watched as an alien transport ship landed near their small town. "Remember the plan," Paul said quietly. "Wait until they're all out." The Vuldurians marched from their ship in a straight line. They headed toward the town's power station. When the last soldier was 50 feet from the ship, Paul pressed a button on a small device. Hidden sprinklers throughout the field sprayed the ground with water. The soil turned to mud under the aliens' feet. They slipped and struggled. While they were distracted, Paul and the others rushed the empty ship. Within minutes, they were inside. "Just like the diagrams Dr. Walsh sent," Paul said as he looked at the control panel. "Let's see what this button does." Near Sydney, Park Ranger Michelle Bennett led a group of aliens into the dense bush. She had pretended to surrender when they landed, offering to show them to the city's water supply. Instead, she led them in circles. "It's just ahead," she kept saying, taking them deeper into the wilderness. The Vuldurian squad, used to city fighting on developed worlds, became lost in the unfamiliar terrain. Their communications began to fail as they moved farther from their base. When night fell, Michelle slipped away in the darkness. The aliens were still trying to find their way out 3 days later. Similar scenes played out across the planet. The Vuldurians had expected a traditional war with front lines and major battles. Instead, they faced thousands of small actions by ordinary people who refused to follow the rules of warfare as the aliens understood them. In orbit, Commander Zextrol received confusing reports from his ground forces. "The humans are not fighting properly," one captain complained. "They will not stand and face us. They strike and disappear. They are using our equipment against us," another reported. "They have taken 3 of our transport ships. Their communications make no sense," a third added. "They change codes constantly. They use old technology we cannot block." Some are using paper notes carried by children. Zextrol could not understand what was happening. The war plan that had worked on 17 other worlds was failing here. He sent an urgent message to the High Command. "The initial assault has not succeeded," he reported. "The humans are using unusual tactics. Request permission to begin orbital bombardment." The response came quickly. "Permission denied. Capture their leaders first. We need them alive to control the population." Zextrol stared at the message in disbelief. How could he capture leaders who would not show themselves? How could he fight an enemy that did not fight the way enemies should? On Earth, humanity's counterattack was just beginning. 2 months after the invasion began, Captain John Everett stood on the roof of an abandoned office building in Chicago. Through his binoculars, he watched a Vuldurian patrol ship circle above the city. "Now," he said into his radio. Across the city, 50 radio transmitters turned on at once. Each sent out a signal on the exact frequency that interfered with Vuldurian navigation systems. The alien ship wobbled in the air, then drifted off course. Second team, go, John ordered. A small group of soldiers and civilian volunteers moved toward the now confused ship. They carried special weapons designed by Dr. Susan Walsh. These weapons sent out energy pulses that disrupted the aliens' nervous systems without killing them. As the ship tried to correct its course, the team fired their weapons. The ship lurched, then made an emergency landing in a park. John's team surrounded it quickly. Within minutes, they had captured the crew of 5 Valdurians. "Bring that one to base," John said, pointing to the highest-ranking officer. Officer Kilvax, according to his uniform. The alien looked at John with confusion. "You should not be able to do this," he said in halting English. "Your species is primitive." John smiled. "You might want to update that assessment." At the secret underground lab, Dr. Walsh examined the captured Valdurian. Officer Kilvax sat perfectly still as human doctors scanned him. "Their nervous system is fascinating," Susan told John. "They have incredible strength and intelligence, but they need long rest periods. They can't function on low sleep like we can." "That explains a lot," John said. "Their attacks always stop after about 10 hours. "Exactly. And look at this." She showed him a brain scan. "Their decision-making is different from ours. They follow patterns they've learned. They don't improvise well." Meanwhile, Colonel Samantha Wells coordinated the global counteroffensive from her mobile command center, now hidden in the mountains of Colorado. "We have reports from all continents," she told President Carter over a secure line. "The Valdurians are retreating from most major cities. They can't adapt to our fighting style." "What about casualties?" the president asked. "Lower than expected. The aliens seem unwilling to kill civilians when they can avoid it. They want slaves, not bodies." "That's something we can use," Carter said. "What's our next move?" "Captain Everett has a plan to raid their command ship," Samantha said. "If it works, we'll gain access to their entire communication network." The captured officer, Kilvax, watched humans with growing interest. They gave him food and medical treatment. They asked him questions but didn't hurt him when he refused to answer. This was not how prisoners were treated in the Empire. Most strange was how the humans worked without rest. They took short sleep breaks in shifts. Some functioned on beverages they called coffee and energy drinks. Kilvax, who needed 12 hours of deep rest after a 10-hour active period, found this baffling. "Why do you not surrender?" he asked Dr. Walsh one day. "The Empire has never been defeated." "We're not like other species you've conquered," she replied simply. On the 50th day of the invasion, John Everett led a team of 20 volunteers on the most daring mission yet. Using a captured Valdurian shuttle and wearing modified alien armor, they approached the main command ship in orbit. "Remember, we need their communication codes and navigation data," John told his team. "Then we plant the device Dr. Walsh gave us. We have exactly 40 minutes before they realize we're not Valdurians." The human team docked with the massive alien ship. Guards checked their IDs but didn't look closely at their faces, hidden behind Valdurian-style helmets. The plan was working. As they moved through the ship, following memorized maps based on the smaller captured vessels, John marveled at how predictable everything was. Every corridor was marked the same way. Every guard stood in the expected position. The Valdurians had conquered 17 solar systems using the same tactics every time. That was about to become their biggest weakness. 6 months into the war, massive reinforcement ships appeared near the edge of the solar system. The Valdurian Empire had sent its main battle fleet, expecting to find Earth mostly conquered. High Commander Vex Duran stood on the bridge of the largest ship, the Imperial Fist. He was tall even for a Valdurian, with deep blue skin marked by battle scars. "Show me the current situation," he ordered. The screens lit up with images of Earth. What Vex Duran saw shocked him. The initial invasion force was scattered and in retreat. Humans controlled most of their cities again. Even worse, several Valdurian ships appeared to be flying under human control. "This is impossible," Vex Duran said. How could primitive beings defeat our forces? His second-in-command looked nervous. Sir, we have received disturbing reports. The humans have already adapted some of our technology. They fight in ways we have never seen. No matter, Vex Duran replied. We now have 5 times the original force. We will crush them quickly. On Earth, former high school teacher Kevin Richardson worked in a converted basement. Computer screens surrounded him. People of all ages typed at keyboards, monitoring alien communications. They're sending new attack coordinates, Kevin said. Send the false confirmation codes. A teenage girl nodded and typed quickly. The humans had learned to intercept Valdurian orders and send fake responses. The aliens, with their rigid command structure, never questioned orders that came through proper channels. Dr. Susan Walsh had made another breakthrough. She showed President Carter a small device in a secure meeting room. This virus will disrupt their neural networks, she explained. It doesn't harm them permanently, but it scrambles their ability to communicate with each other for about 6 hours. How do we deliver it? Carter asked. Through their air filtration systems. Their ships all use the same design. The president nodded. Get it to Captain Everett's team immediately. Meanwhile, captured Officer Kilvax had begun to speak more freely with his human captors. He was fascinated by their resilience. In the Empire, we train for specific tasks only, he told John. A soldier does not know how to repair ships. A pilot does not know ground combat. But your people, even your children, know how to fight and build things. We call it being well-rounded, John replied. Comes in handy. The new Valdurian fleet launched a massive attack. They targeted power plants, water systems, and food storage facilities across the planet. They expected humans to surrender when faced with such overwhelming force. They didn't understand what they were dealing with. In Nebraska, farmers used old diesel generators to keep equipment running. In coastal cities, people used simple water purification methods developed for camping and wilderness survival. Communities shared resources and adapted. The High Commander watched in growing frustration as humans refused to behave as conquered people should. Begin the planetary bombardment, he ordered finally. Target their largest population centers. As missiles rained down from orbit, humans took shelter underground. Networks of tunnels and bunkers, some built during the Cold War and others dug in the past 6 months, protected millions of people. On the Valdurian command ship, warning alarms suddenly blared. Sir, a junior officer called out, our security systems are being accessed. Someone is uploading unknown code to our network. Vex Duran spun around. How? Where is the breach? It's coming from everywhere. All access points at once. The virus that Dr. Walsh created spread through the Valdurian fleet in minutes. Ship after ship reported system failures and communication breakdowns. The complex, centralized network that the aliens relied on became their greatest weakness. For the first time in the history of the Valdurian Empire, High Commander Vex Duran felt true fear. These humans were not like any species they had encountered before. They should have surrendered, he whispered as his ship's systems began to fail. How can they keep fighting? What are these creatures? As if in answer, thousands of small craft rose from Earth's surface. The counterattack had begun. As orbital strikes hit major cities, the true strength of humanity revealed itself. Underground networks sprang into action. Transportation engineer Maria Gutierrez had spent months preparing evacuation routes beneath New York. When the bombs fell, her team guided thousands to safety. Stay in the tunnel system, she told the frightened people. We have food, water, and medical supplies at stations every half-mile. Similar scenes played out across the world. Humans had prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. The Valdurians expected panic and surrender. Instead, they witnessed organization and determination. In orbit, Steve Jackson piloted a captured alien fighter. Once a commercial airline pilot, he now led a squadron of 30 similar craft. Each was flown by volunteers who had trained in simulators built from captured Valdurian technology. "Remember what we learned," Steve said over the radio to his team. "They always break right when attacked from below. Use that against them." The small human fleet engaged the massive Valdurian ships. They darted between the larger vessels, causing confusion. The alien commanders, used to formal space battles with clear lines, couldn't adapt to the chaotic human approach. On the ground, retired Marine Eric Daniels led 500 fighters toward the main Valdurian base outside Chicago. They moved in small groups, using the sewers and subway tunnels to get close undetected. "Their sensors look up, not down," Eric told his troops. "Stay below ground until the final approach." The human fighters carried weapons designed by Dr. Walsh. These devices disrupted the aliens' neural networks, rendering them unconscious without killing them. Humanity had learned an important lesson. They didn't need to destroy the Valdurians to defeat them. On the Imperial Fist, High Commander Vex Duran struggled to maintain control. Ship after ship reported system failures and human attacks. "How do they coordinate without central command?" he demanded, watching the tactical display. "Their movements make no sense." The truth was simple but incomprehensible to the Valdurian mind. Humans didn't need constant orders from above. Small teams made their own decisions based on the situation at hand. When one approach failed, they tried another without waiting for permission. The Valdurians, evolved from pack predators who followed an alpha leader, could not understand this flexible approach. When their command structure broke down, individual units became confused and ineffective. Eric's team reached the main Valdurian base. Instead of a frontal assault, they split into 20 groups and attacked from all sides at once. The aliens, trained to defend against traditional attacks, couldn't respond effectively to the multiple simultaneous threats. "Main control room secured," Eric reported over his radio. "Beginning upload of Walsh's program now." Dr. Susan Walsh's virus thread through the base's systems and connected ships. Within minutes, Valdurian soldiers began dropping unconscious as their neural implants shut down. The base fell without a single human casualty. In space, Steve's team targeted the Imperial Fist specifically. They avoided the weapons systems and instead damaged the engines and communication arrays. The massive ship began to drift, unable to coordinate with the rest of the fleet. High Commander Vex Duran watched in disbelief as his forces were defeated by a supposedly primitive species. His second-in-command approached cautiously. "Sir, we have lost contact with 80% of our ground forces. 50 ships are disabled. The humans are broadcasting a message on all channels." "Show me," Vex Duran ordered. The screen lit up with the face of President Carter. "Attention Valdurian fleet. Your ground forces have been neutralized. Your command ship is disabled. We offer you the opportunity to end this conflict now. We have no desire to destroy your people. We ask only that you leave our system and respect our independence." Vex Duran stared at the screen. In 17 conquered systems, no species had ever offered terms to the Empire. They had always been the ones to dictate surrender conditions. "Sir," his second-in-command said quietly, "what are your orders?" For the first time in his long military career, Vex Duran had no answer. These humans had done the impossible. They had not only resisted the Empire, but defeated it. He pressed the communication button. "I wish to speak with your leader," he said, face to face. The meeting took place on neutral ground, an old aircraft carrier floating in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. President Carter stood with Captain John Everett and Dr. Susan Walsh as the Valdurian shuttle landed on the deck. High Commander Vex Duran stepped out, flanked by 2 officers. He looked around at the vast ocean with wonder. The Valdurian homeworld had no large bodies of water. "Welcome to Earth," President Carter said. "We appreciate your willingness to talk." Vex Duran nodded stiffly. "You have defeated our forces. This has never happened before." They moved to a conference room inside the carrier. Maps and data screens showed the current situation. Disabled Valdurian ships in orbit, captured bases across the planet. "We could destroy your remaining forces," Carter said, "but that is not our way. We prefer peace when possible. Vexteren looked confused. You offer mercy after we attack your world. We do, Carter replied, with conditions. The peace terms were simple. The Valdurian Empire would recognize Earth as independent territory. They would establish a buffer zone between Earth and Imperial space. They would exchange technology and knowledge for mutual benefit. This is not how conquest works, Vexteren said. The victor takes all. The defeated are enslaved or destroyed. John Everett leaned forward. That's the difference between us. We don't want to conquer you. We just want to live free and in peace. After the meeting, Officer Kilvax, who had been living among humans for months, was brought to the carrier. To everyone's surprise, Vexteren asked if Kilvax could stay on Earth. As an ambassador, the High Commander explained, he understands your people better than any Valdurian. He can help build relationships between our worlds. Kilvax looked pleased. During his time as a prisoner, he had discovered things about humans that fascinated him. Their music, their art, their endless variety of foods and cultures. Most of all, their ability to work together despite their differences. I would be honored, Kilvax said. As the Valdurian ships prepared to leave Earth orbit, Vexteren had one final conversation with John Everett. I must understand, the High Commander said. How did you defeat us? Our technology was superior, our military training more advanced, our species physically stronger. John smiled. You made a simple mistake. You thought fighting humans would be easy. But why wasn't it? We conquered 17 systems before yours. Because those other species were like you, specialized, organized in strict hierarchies, predictable. Humans are different. We're adaptable. Every one of us can learn to be a soldier, a builder, a leader when needed. Vexteren considered this. And your mercy, is that also typical of your kind? Not always, John admitted. We can be cruel too. But at our best, we understand that lasting peace comes through cooperation, not domination. As the last Valdurian ships disappeared into deep space, celebrations broke out across Earth. But there was much work to be done. Cities needed rebuilding. New defenses had to be created. The world had changed forever. 6 months later, Earth launched its first ship using modified Valdurian technology. Captain John Everett stood on the bridge with Dr. Susan Walsh beside him. Where to first? Susan asked. The nearby star systems, John replied. It's time we introduced ourselves to the galaxy properly. In the observation lounge, Ambassador Kilvax watched Earth grow smaller as the ship accelerated. He had sent many reports back to the Empire about these strange, resilient beings. Other species in the galaxy were already taking notice, some with interest, others with concern. Word had spread quickly. The humans of Earth had defeated the Valdurian Empire. Every civilization in the region now watched this unexpected new power with a mixture of respect and apprehension. They all silently made the same promise to themselves. Whatever they did, they would not make the mistake of thinking that fighting humans would be easy. As Earth's first starship disappeared into the depths of space, a new chapter in human history began, not as conquered subjects, but as equals among the stars.